And so when we tend to gravitate to what speaks to us, if it aligns with your values, that's typically a good sign that you're on the right path.
I think when you commit, right, to being your best self and continuous improvement and learning, the universe is going to truly conspire with you.
Yeah. We talk often about childlike wonder and how much we embrace that. And boy, I wish I was more just embrace life with childlike wonder. Well, in doing that, you allow every experience, every opportunity is a source of growth.
That was a total random act that impacted my day that I am now going to pass on. And that was inspiring.
Hey, and welcome back to the Living Richly podcast. We're so glad that you are here with us again today. We are going to be revisiting in a very different way a topic that seems to be one of the favorites that we do, and that is about inspiration, the things that inspire us. But we're going to look at it from a very different kind of point of view than we have in the past. Rather than just talking about the books and the podcast episodes or whatever it is that we get inspiration from, we're going to kind of explore different types of inspiration and how we really allow ourselves to be inspired in the day-to-day. And I want to maybe open it up with a question around just what is the impact of staying open to unexpected and different sources of inspiration?
Well, I would respond like, what's the impact of staying open? What's the impact of being closed? I think when we talk about inspiration, and we did a show on this last year where we did share each of us some like books and podcasts and people and things that we draw inspiration from. And we're going to share some of that today too. But I think those are your usual suspects. I think if you are, I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation because curiosity is one of my 4 core values. And I think for me, it's about staying open, right? Like cultivating that childlike curiosity, cultivating that beginner's mind, cultivating that sense of awe and wonder that you approach each day with, I'm going to be surprised with something that is going to light me up today. And when you approach life that way, you're going to find that you find inspiration all around you.
Yeah. What about for you too?
Yeah, I think, when we become so used to the familiar sources, that's almost always a guarantee that that's going to keep us in our comfort zone. And I think being in your comfort zone is okay sometimes, but when you're able to focus on new challenges, that forces you to create and think about new perspectives.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, I remember years ago when I was young, my brother and I, we were like a force to be reckoned with. And by that, I mean, we used to trash my parents' house all the time. And we had put a big hole in the wall, chasing each other. My brother had been chasing me up the stairs. And at the last second, he dove to grab my legs. I deeped right, or left, I guess. And his head went right through the drywall. And of course we thought, well, we're going to be in so much trouble. So we went and grabbed my parents' laundry hamper, thinking like this was our thinking as like 13-year-olds. We're going to put the laundry hamper in front of the hole they'll never notice. Well, of course, the first thing you notice when they come up the stairs is what's our laundry hamper doing in the fucking hallway, right? They move it. I remember my dad, let go. I got this in French, of course. Yeah. But over time, what happened is my dad was real busy in his business, whatever, and he didn't fix the hole right away. And over time, it's like we just got used to it. Yeah. Right, to your point, like sometimes the things that we rely on, they can start to lose their edge because they just become too familiar. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting you go put your head through drywall, but the unexpected can surprise you. Right?
Yeah, I think we can get stuck in the rigidity, right, of like our day to day, and that rigidity can sometimes just really keep us super confined. We're just not open. We're not going with the flow. We're not out there trying to like just allow it to come at you. Like growth can come at you in like the most unexpected times if you're open to receiving it.
We talk often about childlike wonder and how much we embrace that. And boy, I wish I was more just embrace life with childlike wonder. Well, in doing that, you allow every experience, every opportunity is a source of growth. It's a source of learning, of discovery, and being able to embrace things just by simply being in awe in every moment.
Yeah.
And I think that can be very, certainly a very powerful way to explore things. Why do certain let's talk first about books and podcasts and
the usual suspects.
The usual suspects when it comes to inspiration. Why is it that we gravitate and some resonate so deeply?
For me, it's when I connect with what they're saying. It's like I can see my story in their story.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that is connecting to, or I'm like, oh, I so get that. Like, help me through this. So if I can connect, I'm more likely, and I'm never going to go into that closed mindset, but like if I'm listening to Joe Rogan or I'm listening to Oprah, like I'm probably relating more to Oprah just because I can relate more to her situation than I can relate to Joe Rogan. It doesn't mean I can't hear something from Joe, but it just means like I think I really can relate when I hear an Oprah talking about what feels very familiar.
Yeah, I think those trusted resources that we turn to regularly, they're familiar, they're comfortable. We know what to expect when we turn to them, and they have produced for us time and time again moments of inspiration and enlightenment. So we turn to them. For me, movies have always been a big source of inspiration. Actually, recently, probably in the last year, 2 movies that not only were really inspirational, but I found myself at the end. You were there both times. They were part of a healing journey, some major breakthroughs. I wasn't expecting it. I was just watching a fucking movie. And, but one of them was, A Man Called Otto. A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. And then the other one, funnily enough, is called Eric. It's on Netflix, right?
What else?
Series. It's not a movie. It's a series, but, with, Benedict Cumberbatch of Doctor Strange fame. Really powerful shit went down in there. But for me, still the most powerful probably movie moment, was from Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Samwise Gamgee and Frodo have reached the base of Mount Doom, and Frodo can't go on. He's the weight of the ring, the weight of that burden has just worn him out, and he's lying on his back and he wants to give up. And Samwise had tried to carry the ring for him earlier in the story, and that didn't work out so well. So he knows he can't do that for Frodo. And the most powerful words, and I watch that scene, I'm describing it now and I'm getting chills, about the power of friendship and the power of supporting someone, where he says to him, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you. And he picks Frodo up over his shoulder and carries him most of the rest of the way, right? So again, inspiration can literally find you if your heart is open. Right?
Yeah. And I think such, great stories like that really tie to, not just our goals and our experiences, but our beliefs, and so often our values, which I think sometimes we tend to forget, what our values are. And so when we tend to gravitate to what speaks to us, if it aligns with your values, that's typically a good sign that you're on the right path.
Yeah. It is interesting how you're right. You go back to, and some of those, they're so moving. And the reason they're so moving is because story is so compelling and moving, right? And
we are suckers for story, the human race.
We are absolutely suckers. So what is one of your favorite resources? What would be for you something that you find yourself going back to over and over again? It's really shaped a lot of where you are today.
Yeah, Brené Brown, Daring Greatly is like one of my pieces I will always go back to. Whether I'm reading, whether I'm watching a podcast, and Daring Greatly is all about vulnerability and shame, right? It's about what I learned from that was to have an open heart, and in short, the message really is like, wouldn't you rather try being vulnerable and truly connect to a human than to live alone your entire life? Like, it's the fear of not trying, fear of not doing, and like what's worse. And for me, it's just, I don't know. I heard it in a way which was like, what have you got to lose by being vulnerable and truly connecting with another human or humans?
Yeah, that's so good.
And that I use that all the time, whether it's work, whether it's my kids, whether Daring Greatly is just.
Well, I mean, in an upcoming show, we'll be talking about courage and daring to be brave. And we'll be talking about emotional courage.
Yeah.
Isn't that what
very
that
connected.
Is all about?
Very connected.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know for me, Ben Bergeron. And of course we had him. He was one of our first guests that we've had. And
that was the show where we were 8 minutes in
and we messed up.
We realized that we hadn't hit record.
recording.
So we had to stop. So, Ben, thanks for showing up. Can we just start over.
Yeah. And Wendy introduced me to Ben Bergeron. I didn't know who he was. I knew CrossFit and the CrossFit Games prior to that, but had never heard anything of his. And you introduced me to his book, Chasing Excellence. And it's a book that I think whenever I need to just kind of light a fire under myself and around mindset, it is the book that triggers that for me, that sets me on that course again and going, yep, it is this little bit around focusing in on the things that you have control over, and just the way that he words it in the stories that he tells.
John Gordon is one of my favorite authors, and his books are so incredibly easy. I know when I'm working with clients, I recommend some of his books often because he's a storyteller, but in a way that can really tie to what's impacting your life right at that time. And one of my favorites, I just reread it. I've read it so many times because you can read it in a couple of hours, is The Energy Bus. And I often
You've
turn
referred
to
that
it
before,
and I turn to it often too. And it all it is it's the 10 rules to fuel energy in your life, and it speaks a lot about making sure that the right people are on your bus. It speaks about some people are going to get off your bus, and as your bus continues on, and new people are going to get on, and which ties to community, which is also one of my core values. But his style really resonates with me.
Love that. I don't think I'm not one to go back and reread a book from cover to cover. If I've already read it, I'm just not wired. Like, it's just not how I do things. But I certainly, certain books have become like a resource to me. So the framework or the concept or the principle, and so I hang on to them for that reason, and often try to embrace that. But a recent book that has been really great for me is Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. And
such a good book.
What's really fascinating is someone recommended this book to me well over a year ago, and it's been sitting on my Kindle. I bought it when it was recommended. It's been sitting on my Kindle. And as I was, we've been reshaping our business, our coaching business, and reinventing the entire business model. And here I was creating now our new compelling offer and how we're going to help leaders. And then I like, we're 90% there, creating everything, like revamping everything. And then I finally decide, I should probably crack open this book. And I start reading it. I'm like, what did I text you? I could have wrote this. I'm like, So for me, I have so many of those moments where it's the right book at the right time in the right moment.
Yes.
And often there've been some that have been the catalyst that got me going in a certain direction, and others have just been, you're on the right path, keep going, this is good, but highly recommended for any business leader that is stuck in the weeds and struggling to truly lead their business forward. Great resource.
You mentioned about the right book at the right time. So is there a right source for growth, or is that just something more about finding what resonates personally? And the reason I ask that is because I do know this, is I do think there are wrong sources for inspiration. I think there are times when people embrace something that is just the fallacy behind it. I think of cult leaders who can be incredibly inspiring, but also incredibly misguided. And people just put all their energy and their inspiration into what that individual is saying or whatever. So I do think there's wrong sources.
Well, I agree with you. I think,
but is there a right source, or how do we look at that?
Well, on the wrong source, if I could just add, the reason people fall for that stuff is because they often don't have much of a sense of self. They haven't figured out who they are. They haven't figured out what they stand for. And as a result, they're incredibly susceptible to anyone who's inspirational and has a strong conviction about something to buy into it. I think the more self-defined you are, the harder it is for wrong sources to show up on your doorstep. Now, with that said, I think it's important that you expose yourself to things that are outside of your circle.
Yeah, for sure.
It's problematic if you're always just kind of keeping your sphere of learning very, very, very small. But I agree with you. There's wrong sources and right sources.
Yeah, and I think it's finding the source that works for you. It's also, I've talked about this, but find the format that works for you too. Like, if you read, if you want to watch a video or you want to listen to a podcast, figure out, what is the right source for you. I think it's just like, what resonates with you? Great. Okay. It might resonate with you for today, and it may not tomorrow, but like, if it's resonating with you, then dig into it a little bit. And
and
absolutely.
Sometimes it can be what people like and refer, which I think is good.
Yeah.
But then I think sometimes you need to figure out what season you're in.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just trial and error to, what you end up liking, but also what resonates with you.
Yeah, like Joe Rogan.
You have to play around with
picking on Joe Rogan today, but Joe Rogan might work for Eric.
I think he can handle it. I think the Podfather can handle it.
Yeah.
But like Joe Rogan might work for you and not work for me.
I'm not a big.
I know, but I'm just saying there is that, like, to your point, Wendy, just because someone refers something, you might look at it and be like, I don't get it. I don't.
Or it's like somebody saying it's, this is a great movie, and you watch it and you're like, yeah.
Well, it's a good,
we're not taking context into
exactly.
consideration, right? So your context is everything. I think when you commit, right, to being your best self and continuous improvement and learning, the universe is going to truly conspire with you and surprise you. I've told you the story several times. We've had conversations as of late. On the show, I've talked about my first and second great awakening. The second great awakening was really a period of personal awakening and deep healing work that in many ways led to the creation of the Living Richly podcast and the rest of it. I am currently, it took me a while to figure it out, but I'm very aware that I'm currently living my third great awakening right now. It's interesting that, and it's been less inspiration from outside, although there's been some of that. It's I think when you commit, it's amazing what'll happen when you commit to the healing journey. Purpose will emerge. Deeper purpose will emerge.
Yeah.
I've told my clients, I said, I've never felt more on mission. I've never felt more focused. I've never felt more on point. I even told a bunch of clients this week, expect more from me this year, because I am committed to taking things to a whole other level.
Yeah.
So inspiration is an interesting beast in that it's often influenced from external sources, but when you get a fire in your belly, when you get a fire in your spirit, man, those external sources, you're not dependent on them so much because you're intrinsically motivated to move towards the dream or the vision or the passion that is burning in your heart.
So absolutely true. And let me kind of throw out a counter argument to what you just said a moment ago, Kate, around finding those sources, the things that resonate with you.
You're going to be contrarian.
I'm going to be contrarian. The idea of, so how do we, because often that's what we do is we lean into the things that resonate. So we end up sticking with the same tools and the same sources.
Totally.
And we have trouble opening up to other sources and opportunities for inspiration. It's a big, difficult word. It's got more than two syllables.
It's going to be a hard show because it's about inspiration.
And I'll go back to, I remember Wendy and I were just dating for a very brief time, and we went out for dinner.
Dude, you're married now.
And we are married now. So this is a few years ago. And one of the things we were going out for dinner, you were there, and we were at SAS for, you had said, what can I get as a gift? Like, tell me. And I said, well, Wendy's a big reader. Give her maybe one of your favorite sources of inspiration for books, a book that really impacted your life. And you came with a couple of books. One of the books was The Untethered Soul. And I remember I had tried to read The Untethered Soul before that, and I got through about 10 pages and thought, this is the dumbest, most fluffiest, stupidest thing. And I cast it aside, and I said, well, never like this. And then I come to this dinner.
Oh, you were so closed back then, Rob.
Well, but it didn't resonate.
Right.
No.
And then here's somebody who I have incredible respect and trust saying one of the two most impactful books for me in that season for you, and you're giving it as a gift to someone. It caused me to say, I need to go back and revisit this with an openness. If it affects somebody I trust, I need to now look at it. So let's talk. What's it like for you? What's your thoughts around sticking with the tried and true versus the opening to new resources and tools and opportunities?
Well, I think mixing it up is part of the adventure. It's what keeps it fresh and alive. I mean, think of hitting the gym. Like if I love to work out and I know enough about it to know that if I'm hitting those muscle groups exactly the same way all the time, I start to get diminishing returns. I'm not getting, my muscles get used to it, and all of a sudden the resistance training isn't quite hitting it the same way. So you got to mix it up. You got to, you might have chest day today, chest day tomorrow. Well, you shouldn't do that, but, right. But you want to hit it differently, right? So different exercises, different, equipment. I think it's the same in our learning journey. I think if we get too rigid, and again, I'm not a fan of chaos either. I think those trusted sources and resources that we know we can turn to, that have been, they just keep producing for us when we need it. I think that's important to have, but it's that exploring, being willing to venture beyond the safe borders of the harbor, right? And adventure a little bit, that also is part of that.
Yeah. I think it's like ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I think if I use meditation, there's times where I meditate all the time and I'm in it and I love it. And then something happens and I'm out of it and I don't do it as much as I used to do it. And then I'm back in it. I feel like it's the same. Like I can listen to, I was about to say this, but I don't want our listeners to never not listen to us, but you can listen to a podcast, like one specific, like let's say I'm listening to Oprah podcast. And after a while, I'm like, oh, like I'm not feeling as jazzed about it. It's not really sparking me. And then I jump off to another podcast. That's why, but just listen to Living Richly podcast all the time.
Every week you should be downloading those episodes.
Every
2 weeks. Sorry.
You can get really inspired by something and then move just like instinctively. You're like, oh, I think I'm going to try something else. And then you try something else and then you get really like, you can get a little wowed by the shiny thing too. I'm aware of that. Yeah. But oftentimes for me, it's those ebbs and flows. I'll be really into this and then I can move over here, but then I come back to my staple and then I might move over here and I might bounce around. But for me, because curiosity is one of my core values, I'm always looking at it with that openness. But I will say I still have my staples that I come back.
It's like a menu, right?
Yeah.
So a menu of a trusted restaurant that you go to regularly, and there's 2 or 3 dishes on there that you love. Well, that's good. That's great. Because if you've had a busy day, and like sometimes we get together for dinner, the last thing we want to do is
make a decision.
No, just I'm just going to have that because I know I can trust it.
Yeah.
But then there's the adventure of picking something on the menu you've never tried and asking the waiter, so what would you highly recommend? And so I think it's just that was it Dan Siegel in Mindsight that talks about finding balance between chaos and rigidity. Right. And so both those things, both extremes are unhealthy. But as you're floating down the river, there are going to be times that maybe you're leaning up a bit towards more chaos. Get comfortable with that. It's okay. A little bit of chaos isn't going to kill you, right? And sometimes you're moving more towards rigidity because that's what you need, but don't get hung up on either river.
Totally.
Pretty much the same. I think decision fatigue is a big thing for people. We do spend an enormous amount of time getting ready to get ready. I know Kate and I have talked about this before on our Real Women, you know, and I'm sure men go through this as well, but I know for a lot of women, I'm going to do this and then I'll start. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to start, right? Doesn't matter if it's, you're trying to find a new source of inspiration or a new, gym routine, or I was going to say, you look like you've been training the same. But the same over and over.
I was like a backhanded compliment. She reeled me right in and cut the legs out from under me. That's it. I quit.
I'm just kidding.
That was great.
It really was.
That's a go-to move for me. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think
100%.
But I think on the flip side, and I see this all the time in the work that I do, is nothing will stick if you're changing everything every 3 weeks. So I think it's good to change, but you have to give it a little bit of time to sink in and resonate. And then, if we're changing too much, then are you really giving it a chance?
Yeah. Well, you use the language, the shiny new object.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree. Yeah. Sometimes somebody will say to me, oh, you need to read this book or you got to listen to this podcast. And I'll appreciate it. And I thank them. And I don't, because I also recognize when I'm exploring and when I'm doing this, I got to stick to this because there's many ways to get there and I need to pick a path. And I'm choosing to do that while still being open to opportunities. It really is a balance between finding how you both of these. And I love that the continuum there between chaos and rigidity. I think it's so important. We do have people, though. We have people jumping in at all kinds of different times listening to this podcast. And for those that are maybe just beginning the journey of discovering, or maybe they've been stuck in the same sources of inspiration, what's a good go-to that you have that you would be recommending to people as, hey, this is something you could check out or listen to?
Yeah. Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth is a phenomenal book. It's not like the easiest of reads, but it's the first.
You would love it, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I will take
Wow.
that under advisement.
It'll be like the one that you were talking about.
I've never heard of it.
It's such an amazing book. So this book came out over 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's a classic now.
And it's like I said, it's not the easiest of reads, but it's the first time I was ever introduced to the sense of ego and what ego is. And the book is all about living your richest, like your best life. That's what the book's about. But it's the first time I'd ever heard anyone talk about ego and what the ego state is. And I remember being like, I don't understand. And like, it really challenged my thinking around ego, and it really challenged my thinking around how you're not your thoughts. And so Eckhart Tolle is just this brilliant, like if you see him, you're just like, how are you so like, he's zen, he's just so calm. And he's been like, had a really, really difficult life. And so that book for me was the first time that allowed me to, I guess, just see my thoughts, my ego, my brain in a different way. So just, you talk about changing a little bit of a reset and changing the way you think. I highly recommend that book.
Mine for me by far, for someone early in the journey, even someone who's wanting to accelerate the journey, would be Kelly Flanagan's Lovable.
So good.
Yeah. It's again, we believe, we've said it so many times on the show, radical self-acceptance is such an important component to your growth journey that unless you're working on that, you're going to really struggle. And he helps you overcome the power of shame and self-doubt, and it's, again, he's a beautiful writer, and it's easy to read, it's easy to understand. Highly recommend.
And the more we've gotten to know him, and of course he's been a guest on the show a number of times, and we've just enjoyed that.
We're about to have another show with him,
and we're about to have another show with him. He just he's a beautiful writer, he's a beautiful human being, and you really get that sense with him.
I think so. It's funny because a lot of people will say, oh, like I'm not much of a reader, and a lot of that stuff is just frou-frou, and it's just too my mind just doesn't go there, whatever. I have one person who has said, I don't like those make yourself better type books. And I think, again, it's finding something that resonates with you. I think the book that's been out for a while now, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Sincero, I think.
Yeah. I think.
But it's light.
Wow. Just had to have a play on.
You're welcome.
I don't think she said thank you.
I was anticipating it.
But it's light, funny, and conversational. So for somebody that, maybe doesn't love to read, it's a great book. But it also helps people be able to build self-confidence with like super practical exercises, but also kicking your ass at the same time.
All right. So we started out the show by saying we're going to talk about some of the non-traditional, ways that we find inspiration. We just spent some time talking about a traditional way that we find inspiration, source of inspiration, books, podcasts. First of all, I guess the question I'd have is, how does growth come from places where we're not expecting it? And does it? Is this something that, in what ways have you experienced that? And so just talk about that a little bit, about finding inspiration in the unexpected.
Yeah, it's having those aha moments. Like you can hear something a million times, and for some reason at some moment you hear it again and you just hear it differently. You're like, oh, and you have that aha moment. I think it's about being open.
Yeah.
Like I can openly admit that I was watching Jersey Shore, the new one. I like my reality TV when I've had a long day. Anyway, but there's Mike the Situation. And
we're not going to judge you.
If you ever watch Jersey Shore in the early days, they're just like, they're drunk, they're messy. Like he's a womanizer. He later in life had massive addiction issues. Like you would just look at this kid and be like, you're a total disaster. Now is gone to rehab. He went to jail for tax evasion. He's come out and he's completely reinvented his life. He's sober. He helps other people get sober. He's an inspiration to a lot of addicts. Has a wife. He has 3 beautiful children. You talk about finding inspiration in a weird, I remember just looking at him going, okay, if Mike the Situation from Jersey Shore can get to where he's at, I can fucking do anything. Right? But you can have if you're just open to it, sometimes you can just get those little nuggets anywhere.
Yeah, and I like that idea. It is about training yourself to be open to those moments, to finding them and to be looking for them. Far too often we go through life with such blinders on, not paying it, and we miss out that opportunity in so many places.
Yeah, well, most of the adult population, and here's the harsh truth, most of the adult population is asleep at the wheel of their own life.
Yeah.
They're busy numbing, running, hiding and distracting.
Yeah.
And are not paying attention to, they're missing the magic because they're closed and living a protectionist sort of, I'm just trying to get through. I'm just trying to get by. I think one of the greatest pandemics of our era is boredom.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we scroll our lives away on social media, because we're bored.
Mm-hmm.
We lack purpose. We lack passion. We lack a sense of meaning. And inspiration and motivation are different to me.
Mm-hmm.
Inspiration is something that a source that can get you fired up. Motivation is something that comes and goes in your life.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Some days you're motivated to go to the gym, and other days you're not
Yeah.
motivated, and you got to drag your ass there.
Yeah.
What I would say to people is, what you don't need motivation. What you need is a discipline.
Yeah.
Your why has to be backed up by your work, right? And so even as we talk about inspiration, it's understanding this notion of stop just trying to numb your way through.
Yeah.
And open your eyes to the beauty of the world around you. Yeah, there's a lot of dark things happening in our world right now. But you could go back to most generations and point to shit that's going down. That's really not very, very positive and can be very disheartening. Mm-hmm. But if you have a certain lens and you choose to say there is possibility and potential all around me, then you will walk around with a tank full of inspiration.
Yeah.
From the even Mike the situation,
Right.
will inspire you to go, if he
It's
can
true.
do it, I can do
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much truth to that. And I'm going to start with you on this one, is when we think of kind of unlikely sources of inspiration, let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
What are some ways, what are some places and times,
We're getting fun.
where
Rob.
we're going to have fun, Rob. Fun Rob is here.
Oh, wow. Wow. Can you?
Help us.
Steve's like, I don't know what just happened.
No.
And I don't know if I can edit that out of the show.
I was about to ask him, can you edit Fun Rob out of the show? Fun Rob is great.
I wanted to ask, can we isolate? Can we use it over and over
Here you
again?
go.
We're going to create like a
boomerang.
Yeah.
So what are some, where do you get inspired that seems to be a little bit unlikely?
Oh, when Fun Rob comes out at 10 o'clock at night.
Whoa!
Oh,
That's a whole different show.
Yeah.
it's a different podcast, different show.
Different show.
OnlyFans.
I'll tie it back to a movie. This one always, and I've watched it so many times, but G.I. Jane, 1997, Demi Moore shaved her head, but it speaks so much to me about just resilience, breaking barriers, following your path, even when you're walking alone. There's so many parts in the movie where she's walking alone. She's obviously she's in SEALs training, a very male dominant type of, training and just that self-discovery, with your untapped, potential. So
but
I watched that this weekend.
Your favorite line in any movie in history is from that, movie.
Suck my dick.
That's going to show up as suck my beep.
And that wasn't even the line I was thinking of.
Sorry, Mom and Dad.
Sorry, nation.
No, it was when she was having the argument with her boyfriend. Get your dick back in here.
Wow. So moving along.
We will edit all this out.
No, we won't.
No, we won't. This is fun.
So an interesting one for me surprised me several weeks ago. I'm training in my gym, and I came across this YouTube channel called Motiversity. And it's a series of inspirational talks and clips of different speakers and athletes and talk. Now, there's a bit of hustle culture stuff in there, and in the past I would have never even listened to this. But what I realized is, as much as the hustle culture takes a message perhaps too far, there is a lot in there about resilience and picking yourself up and not making excuses. And if it's going to be, it's up to me. And so I find myself now, here I am pushing heavy weights and I'm listening to these truths, and the whole experience has become like this mind body thing. Like my mind's getting charged, my spirit's getting fired up, even as I'm pushing my muscles in the gym. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I had one of my moments of inspiration that was unexpected was when I was in Tim Hortons, like through the drive-through. Tim Hortons for our non-Canadian. I guess it's US owned now, Tim Hortons. Anyways, I'm getting coffee. It's like a Starbucks. There's a lot of extra information not required.
Tim Hortons was founded in.
Store number 1 is in Hamilton, Ontario.
My favorite Tim Hortons coffee for many years was a triple.
Tim Hortons was a hockey player for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Triple.
Oh,
that's like
back in the day.
Wow.
And then I stopped. It was sugar, so then it was just triple.
So, Kate.
Okay.
Anyway, back to you.
So back to Tim Hortons. So I was in the drive-thru, anyways, and I had pulled up, and I went to go pay for my order, and the Tim Hortons person said to me, they're like, "Well, the car in front of you paid for your order."
Yeah.
And there was a time where that was kind of going through the city, and I remember just being so blown away by like the act of kindness that I was just like, wow. So I definitely did pay it forward. And you're praying that it's not like person behind you's not buying for like a whole hockey team, but I did pay it forward.
$600.
Yeah. But what it did is it inspired me to be kind and the power of kindness. And I remember feeling that feeling within me was like, that was a total random act that impacted my day that I am now going to pass on.
Yeah.
And that was inspiring.
Love that.
Yeah.
I know for me, a couple of us have mentioned, movie, you mentioned G.I. Jane, The Martian. And I don't know what it is about that movie that resonates so much with me. One, I guess it's, it's just the idea that when you focus and put your mind to it, you can accomplish great things. And it just, every time I read, I get emotional at the end of the movie. I know what's going to happen, and yet I still get teary eyed. Yeah. And I remember it wasn't that long ago. I was showing it to Wendy for the first time, and she asked the question. I said, it's based on this book. And have you read the book? No. I can do that? So I did.
There are these things called books.
Yes,
they have covers and pages.
And the book is as inspiring to me. And I need to go back. I'd like to read that book again.
Did you cry at Little House on the Prairie when the little girl ran down the hill?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I ever really watched it.
I didn't watch it either.
Well, I was forced to watch it because I had an older sister. But I never cried. She did.
What keeps people from being able to embrace inspiration in the unexpected?
Oh, I think they have their minds kind of made up as to how it is. Or, a lot of people think it's, frou-frou, kumbaya, or they just have a vision in their head rather than being open to creating it however they want.
Yeah. I think we're busy. I think being busy, I think our society values productivity over being present. So I think, if you're far more present, then you're likely just even going to see it. Like, I think because we're so busy doing and not being half the time that we don't even see it when it's right in front of us.
Yeah.
That busyness can just take over.
There's a lot of noise.
There's a lot of noise. And we make a lot of our own noise.
We do, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's about more than just being open to inspiration. I think it's just about being more open, period.
Yeah. It's a great way to put it.
We have, in our society, think of how closed and fragmented our society is right now, right? People are so polarized.
Yeah.
Everyone's convinced they're in the right. Everyone are convinced it's my way or the highway. Right? The more convinced you are as a human being, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have your convictions or your beliefs, but embrace them loosely. Like, have conviction, believe strongly, but as soon as you get to a place where you're closed to new input, and that you can't listen to another point of view, or you can't, part of being even courageous that, perhaps we'll cover on the show is have the courage to read something you normally wouldn't read, watch something you wouldn't normally watch. Like, what are you afraid of? Like, you don't have to embrace it. You don't even have to believe it. You might read it and think this is shit and I don't want to ever read it again. But there is something about that openness and that curiosity, that, is an absolutely necessary component to evolving. You can't evolve with a closed mindset, and convinced is closed.
Yeah.
Open is curious.
Yeah.
It's so true. Because I mentioned The Martian a moment ago as a source of inspiration. And I know I've had even people say, like, Rob, it's not real. Like,
what?
Yeah. And it's like,
sci-fi's not, are you going to tell me next that Star Wars isn't real?
Wow. No.
Because you're afraid I'll have a meltdown on the show.
Why would I believe that? I mean, I would like, of course it's real. The Force, right? I'm going to move your cup right now. But it is this idea that, like, so what? It's a makeup story, and yes, you can be inspired by it.
Yeah,
right. Like, that's the idea that we limit ourselves to what that source. The only these sources are allowed to be inspirational is closed.
Yeah.
Is such a closed-minded. So how do you get people, how do you encourage people to create that space to allow for the unexpected inspiration?
I think being okay with not everybody's going to get it. You don't need to seek approval, like to your point on who cares if the movie's up, right? If it resonates with you and it moves you in a way that allows you to be inspired. I think in a society where we're always seeking approval from so many people on everything, somewhere along the way, we forget to have our own voice on, no, but I like this, or this is what I want, and this might not be for you, but this is for me. Yeah. And so I think just be okay with, you don't need to justify or explain yourself to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just being open without judgment, like to build on what you were saying is we are in a very polarized world right now, but to truly, like, we used to sit around a table and discuss politics, and it was a discussion. It wasn't this divide at the table. And so I think genuinely listening to someone else's point of view or a different inspirational feed, whatever it looks like, and listen without judgment, without having a point of view on it, without defending how you feel about it, just listen openly to what you're hearing. Yeah. And I think we've lost the art of being able to listen without defending, without judgment.
Yeah. 100%. And I think I would add to that, again, coming back to curiosity.
Yeah.
Cultivate curiosity. Cultivate a curious mind and a curious spirit. Never stop asking questions. Never stop looking for answers. Never stop being adventurous. I said it earlier, one of the greatest pandemics of our time is boredom, and people are bored because they're seeking the wrong things. Yeah. They're seeking entertainment over purpose. Yeah. They're seeking to pass the time as opposed to make the time count. But as the good book says, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock, the door will get open. When you have a curious spirit, the world opens up before you. When you're closed, you live a very small life.
Yeah. And it's a belief. Yeah. Right. It becomes a belief. We hear people talk about, how they can find that inspiration anywhere. Every moment is an opportunity to learn. There's no losing. There's only learning. Yeah. All of these kind of catchphrases all stem out of a belief that we have. Some don't have. Yeah. And if the belief isn't there, it's change your beliefs. You want to change your actions. You want to change your results, change what you believe. And I think it's making that really shift to believing that every situation and experience is an opportunity to grow and to learn.
Yeah.
We're slowly starting to kind of wrap everything up, but one last question around this. Talk about a time when you were maybe surprised in a difficult moment and how that brought about and led to an opportunity for growth or clarity.
Mine is more of a personal experience, but it's when I asked for a divorce and decided that it was time.
Just a little thing.
Just a little thing, right? Something small. Right. But it was, time for me to decide to put myself first, grow and be happy with what I wanted and not what others wanted and what was expected from me. But that was such a difficult situation, but I look at how much I've grown from it and I'm still growing from it.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. For me, it's been this season, that we've been in of taking the business to the next level. Again, we had a very successful business before we could have coasted very comfortably, in what we had, but, got a vision for something better and more impactful that would provide for an even greater lifestyle for us. But that has caused me, it's been like going back to school. So many new skills that had to be learned, and starting in many ways, it's not from zero, but no one likes to feel incompetent. No one likes to feel like you're a very small fish in a very big pond. And so that whole process of pushing myself beyond perceived limits, of putting myself in that discomfort of learning something new and saying, okay, I've got a track record of when I apply myself, I'll learn it, but I don't like how I feel right now about it because I feel like a novice, right? But all of that has led to tremendous inspiration, tremendous motivation. Like I said, my third great awakening, I attribute to putting myself in that context and being okay with being not okay. And what emerged from that, again, I wasn't expecting what has resulted, but what has resulted is a new vision and purpose for my life that I've never been this on purpose.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it shows up. It shows up in almost every conversation that we have. I see it. It's so genuine in you, and it's something that I applaud. I know you know that I celebrate it. It's scary as fuck, and yet and as exciting as.
What did you say to me the other day? I've made a commitment this year to not try to get into your head.
Yes.
Because it's a scary place.
Good call.
Good call. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. I know for me, and we're recording this episode today. We do often record a number of episodes. We're recording it on the anniversary of my daughter's death. A story that I've shared and I've told. It's interesting. I put out a post today, and it's the first time where I've shifted, because it's only been in the last few years where I'm realizing that moment and how significant it is, but the growth and the learning that came out of it. And I shared in a post that I put on some social medias today about the lessons learned from going through that, and the way that resonates.
Wow.
I've been getting all day today direct messages, private messages, where in the past it would be a lot of people just going, "Oh, I'm so sorry," right? Which I don't need that. I'm that's not where I'm not. It's not a sad day for me.
Yeah.
You used the word for me this morning that I didn't have. It's a reflective day.
Yeah.
It's a reflective on the things that I've learned. It is this is going to sound a bit weird, but it has now become a source of inspiration.
Right.
The tragedy of losing my daughter is now a source of inspiration for growth that I have today. And that's what we're really talking about.
That's incredible.
In this episode, right? So, so I think that's wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, kind of quick, what's 1-2 words? Final thoughts, something you would leave if you want to encourage people who are really in that place, they're living their best life. What would you say to them today about unusual sources of inspiration? Eric's giving you a big
clearly.
You are going.
That's you.
That's you. I'm giving you a cue.
Kate, what would you have?
Wow, your subtlety is blowing my mind.
I'm so subtle about being subtle.
He's so flawless.
No one even noticed. No one even noticed.
Just be open and try and be present. Like, it's just like, we talked about it so much, but try to stay open. If you can keep that openness, you keep that curiosity, inspiration will find you.
Love that.
I love that.
I'd say get out of your comfort zone, push yourself beyond your perceived limits, because when you do, you will rely less on external sources of inspiration. You will light a fire in your belly that will keep you warm and keep you moving forward.
Love it.
I think it's important to remember that everyone wants to have the best view at the top of the mountain, but no one wants to climb it. And the happiness and the growth only occurs when you're actually climbing it.
Yeah, so true.
And I would say never stop listening to this podcast. That is the most
That wasn't self-serving
important.
at all.
Yeah, exactly. Just to reiterate what Kate said earlier, this podcast should never be put on this.
Never.
In all seriousness, we do appreciate so much all of you that do continue to listen to and support and share. We want to encourage you to check out the website, livingrichley.me. You're going to find all the information about all of the things that we're doing, including every episode that maybe you missed or put aside in the past that you can go back and look at. Find your best sources of inspiration as well. And so we want to thank you for being a part of this, being a part of the Living Richly Nation and continuing to just take this journey with us. Until next time, get out there and live your best life.